saltará un aviso y luego ya ponemos mano a la obra. So basically, once I start recording, everybody gets a notification and you have the possibility to accept and stay in the conference, or if you decline, basically you get disconnected. Well, assuming that if you don't want to be recorded, you cannot not be in the session. And for today, this session is designed to be a basic, an introduction to Zoom. Now, what happened a little bit is, obviously, when we initially started those sessions, they were designed for faculty to teach fully online. And now, in addition to that, Zoom is actually going to be the underlying technology for the hybrid classroom. So having a basic command of the tool is very helpful to actually be operative in that setting. But also, to some extent, please help me, guide me with your questions. Now, please feel free to interrupt if there's something you want to clarify or like something you want to zoom in on. Because otherwise I'll just start with a more generic explanation of the tool, of the different functionalities that we have available, without specifically looking into what that means for the hybrid classroom or for the full-blown video conference. Okay.
Excuse me, Ulrike. I would suggest maybe muting the microphones. I think that would be good. I mean, if we are not, yeah.
I've got a. Now she's silenced. I've got a master control button to actually mute everybody. And that is exactly what I just did, because at times it is easier to mute everybody than to look for who actually has the microphone open, and just mute individually. So there's a master control button. What I'll be doing first is I'll be sharing a presentation with you guys, which actually has screenshots, because your view of Zoom right now is slightly different because you're connected as a participant. And so obviously the participant does not have all the functionality that you have as a faculty or as a host of the session when you're running the session. And so the easiest way to actually share those with you is through sharing some of the screenshots and actually talking over them. And that's what I'll be doing. So now you should be seeing my PowerPoint presentation. You see that? Yes? So it's basically, this is also making reference to the resources we've been building over the last weeks, which is a support site where you have the different functionalities. So here you can see actually at the top, on the site you find indications about technical requirements, like a quick setup, the first steps, which is very similar to the presentation we're looking at today, which is explaining the different functionalities. And then there's specific sites dedicated actually to the polling function, to breakouts, to video, the screen sharing, and the attendance, like polling the attendance report. And also going back, if later on you have any questions, you can also consult there. Just open the chat. Now that there somewhere as well. So without further ado, so this is basically what you see when you log on to a session, or when you open the application, you get into a session. You'll have your profile picture, and I do recommend that you actually upload a picture in case at some point you would, in case you have to disconnect the camera. So it's nicer to actually have at least your photo there than just a black. And at the bottom you see the different functionalities that you'll have as a host. No? And so first I'll explain those a little bit going from left to right. The first part is actually the microphone. Clicking on it, you can mute and unmute yourself. actually important that right next to the microphone, you have a little arrow. And when you click on that, you access the menu and have different menu options. And so importantly, this is here where you can actually do the microphone and speaker check before you start your conference. So I recommend to do that, at least like with the initial setup, to do that every now and then, just to make sure that your audio is fine. Another thing which is good to know is while you're speaking, the little microphone icon actually gets green, and like it goes up and down according to the volume of your voice, and so it captures your voice. But at the same time, as long as you see that your microphone is turning green, your sound is okay. So if somebody has difficulties in hearing you, that will be on the receiving end. So sometimes it's good to know, because you might have a participant complain that they can't hear anything. But if you're green in the microphone, you're good. And you can ask the student or the participant to figure out on their end what's wrong and why they're not getting a good sound. Okay. And very similar, if you look at the video icon at the bottom, the same thing, kind of like you have a little arrow, and when you click on that, you get access to the menu. And there I would like to draw your attention to the second point, which is actually the configuration of the video. When you click on that, a pop-up appears, and there's a few things which you might want to take into consideration. So the first one, which we recommend, always bearing in mind that it affects that it is dependent on the video and the internet connection you have. No, but if you enable high definition video, the video quality improves. But obviously, if you have a poor internet connection, you might actually disable that function to make sure that you're good on the bandwidth and that you don't overload. And very similarly, like the last option down here is something that faculty are asking for a lot, which is the ability to see up to 49 video feeds on one screen. Now you can in Zoom you can choose between the speaker view, which always pulls up the person who's talking as a big video, and the gallery view is basically all the participants which are connected are shown in a grid view. And so the maximum number of video feeds that can be shown displayed on a single screen is up to 49. And the same kind of like it's convenient if you have bigger groups to make sure that you see everybody. But obviously it does pull on the internet connection. So again, if you have a poor internet connection, you might actually disable that function, and then just kind of like, I think by default, Zoom puts a maximum of 25 students, and then you could just kind of like scroll the displays, right? But it's a little easier on both actually on the internet connection and the processing power of your device, of the computer. So if you're actually working from a laptop computer which has its gears, that might get you into trouble, just for you to be aware of it. The next button you have at the bottom of the menu is security, which I believe right now you don't see that because I'm the host and I can make changes to that. But here the important bits is really the option of the waiting room. For example, when you connected to this session, you briefly were in the waiting room before I actually admitted you into the session. And depending on, I think this is depending on programs and depending on the type of activity. At the end of the day, the waiting room gives you some security about who's entering into your session. And in particular, in the beginning, when we didn't have the integration into any of the IE systems, it was important to have the waiting room enabled to avoid having people which are not part of the IE community. Right now, I think through an additional setting, which is just making our links only available for IE users, you already set a pretty high security standard, you know, because it requires everybody to connect to the session to actually log in with IE credentials. And by that, you already have a limitation, but it depends on the type of activity. You know, obviously for commercial activities, people try to make it more open, make it easier for people to connect. And for the classrooms, I think at the end of the day, it's up to program management. I think some programs prefer to have the waiting room enabled and others don't. But you can actually, in session, for example, if you have the waiting room enabled, you can actually, after 10 minutes, maybe disconnect. And so you don't have to be attentive to any people joining late. So you can just click here and click disable that feature. Are we good so far?
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah, everything is fine.
Yeah, Ulrike,
Yes.
one question. I saw that in the security, regarding the participants, you have there the different rights, no? Are they usually by default available to share a screen and chat, I suppose, no?
Yes, the screenshot you see is the default.
Okay.
Well, no, the waiting room, I think, is depending on who is creating the link for your session. The ability for participants to share their screen and to chat is by default, no, because the idea is that the sessions are interactive and that people can actually share materials. If you have a big event, which is maybe more open, sometimes in connection to the Zoom bombing, people join your session and show inappropriate content. So actually, this is a quick way to stop anybody from sharing. No? For example, and the last option you see here, actually, Anna, I think we were talking about that the other day. Kind of like the last option here is actually to allow participants that they can change their name. And for our classes, this option is not enabled because we want people to identify themselves and not to be signed on to the sessions with weird nicknames or kind of like changing their names or whatever it is. So yes, this is the default setting. And I think the interesting ones might be the first two. You could choose to block the meeting. Not kind of say, okay, I take away the waiting room and then I block the meeting so nobody can get in. That's an option. If somebody loses the connection, if somebody loses internet and gets disconnected, they cannot rejoin. Again, I think it depends. And we'll find other ways to say when to come back. Does that answer your question?
Perfect, thank you.
There is a question on the chat.
If we let the students share their screen and chat, there's no need to make them host, right? No, the functionality, they can chat and they can share materials. Again, because the way we deploy Zoom is to enable an interactive conversation, or like an interactive conversation with the students. So we understand that actually the ability to share materials is part of that. And it doesn't have anything to do, I think if you're host of the session and somebody else wants to share, you get a notification. But they don't need any specific rights for the room. Okay. And so looking at the list of participants in the chat function, basically, and you have that as well. If you click on the list of participants to the right, it'll open the list of participants. And if you click on the chat just below, it'll open the chat. The list of participants, that is the screenshot you see is actually for the host. And so I have the magic button of silencia a todos, like muting everybody. That's at the bottom of the list of participants. And when you look at your list of participants, that looks slightly different. Because you have the little blue hand. Kind of like to actually raise your hand. That's a functionality that the host doesn't have the students for them to be able to raise hands. And once a student uses that functionality, there's two ways where you can actually see that. You can see it just behind the name in the list of participants, and you can see it in the video feed. Now, kind of the same as I will just raise his hand, and so you can also see on the video feed at the top right corner the little blue icon. For 100% video conferencing, I would recommend that you have the list of participants open, because it always pulls up the person who raised their hands. If you have multiple, like if you, I don't know, if you have maybe 35 names and you don't see all the names in the list of participants, it will always pull up the ones who most recently raised their hands. And for the chat function, just a few comments. Like at the bottom, you can actually choose whether you want to write to everybody or just to some of the participants. You can see all kinds of files through the chat. You can't see the icon of the share icon because it's behind the different sources where you can actually take the document from. You can see you can choose directly to share out of your drive or from your computer. And if you're sharing interactive links, maybe see the difference between www.ie.edu. This is not interactive. If you share the entire link, it is actually clickable for the students. So if you want students to maybe click onto a linked document or on a reference you're making, you need to include the entire full URL. And I think in general in Zoom, because everybody is connected with camera and voice, it is easier to have a more direct conversation. And for example, if you what you are used to in maybe Adobe. And so I think in general that the importance of the chat goes down, but nonetheless you can, the chat is obviously there, and you can also you can download the chat after the session has been completed from the reference. If you go back to see if anything important was said, or just to make sure that you answered all the questions that might have come through the chat. You can download that as for your reference later. Next, this is a visual. This is a screenshot from the web portal. So I don't know if you've actually accessed through both ways. One way to access Zoom is the desktop application which you downloaded. And then you have through ieuniversity.zoom.us. That actually gets you to the web portal where you also made granted the permission for the scheduling assistant and all that. And so on the web portal, you have the recordings of each of the sessions, and within that, and within the recordings, hello, welcome back. Within the recordings, you also see kind of like below, this is the video file, and then you actually have an audio file. If the session is in English, you have an audio transcript, and you have the chat file where you can download it. So all of those are, let's say, like recorded as separate files. You can access them in the way you prefer. And this is an example of the gallery view. You have what, 1, 2, 3. You have 20 students displayed. No, and so obviously, kind of like depending how many people you have connected, and you can see all the video feeds. The students, you guys have at the bottom in your menu, you have the reactions button as well, which is basically 2 icons. It's the clapping hand, it's the applause, and the thumbs up. So that's an option also to do, I don't know, quick check-in questions. No, is everybody following? Give me a thumbs up, yes. And it's a quick way to engage or also see who's following. I think in general, there have been questions about can we expect students to turn on the camera? I think that's always a big question. I believe yes. No, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that they're connected, that it's them who's connected and that they're participating. And so the same, for example, in the hybrid classroom, can we expect the students who remotely connect to the classroom to switch on their camera? I believe it's essential. But then I think at times it might be difficult to make it happen really for everybody. As I mentioned before, you can switch between the gallery view and the speaker view. You see that icon at the, I believe for you it's the top right. Not correct. This is the speaker view, which pulls up the speaker and only has up to I think 5 small video feeds on the top, or the gallery view, which displays as much of the video feeds as possible. Couple of words about the recording. For the faculty accounts, sessions are recorded automatically. This has been chosen as a default setting just to make sure that we don't forget to record, given that the activity of video conferencing exploded with COVID-19. Obviously, there's not always somebody who can make sure that the recording is actually switched on, or somebody to accompany the professor in doing that. And so the default setting has been chosen as the recording, but you do have the possibility to actually pause or stop the recording. I recommend once you, when you're preparing for a session, to not touch, but there might be other situations where you're actually just opening the session to maybe prepare something or to practice, or there might be situations where you use your Zoom account for office hours with students, or for like, I don't know, team coaching or whatever, where the recording may not be necessary. So you have to be able to just disconnect. Once the recording of the session is completed, you'll get an email notification. You and the person for program management, the scheduling assistant, does get that email notification as well, which is where they actually take the link from to then publish on campus. Okay, because otherwise, for you as a host, as like owner of the license, you can access to the recordings or through the link or through your web portal. But obviously that is individual and goes on your single sign-up, so I mean nobody else can access. And so for program management, typically they take links from the email notification, and if they use that, they might be asking you, would you please look up this session to make sure they can share it. Any questions? Anything? This is literally, I mean, this is the same screenshot we just saw a second ago.
No, I have, sorry, Ulrike, I have a question on the chat, but if you prefer, we can hold the questions through the audio. So I understand that, in terms of recording and distributing things to students, we have to do nothing.
No.
Okay.
If you don't stop the recording of the session, literally, I mean, you open the link and it automatically starts recording. So you don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
And you automatically see the little icon, or like
thank you.
The cloud and the right button.
Okay.
At the top as a confirmation. So you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
For the recordings, the way how they are shared and what is shared, I think that is again like pretty much determined by program management, because obviously, if to the extent possible, you want everybody to participate live. And the recordings are cloud recordings, which again is an institutional decision, because at the end of the day, we have a lot of faculty we're collaborating with, and we don't want to lose individual recordings on personal laptops. which then would be inaccessible for us. You know, so everything is predetermined to be a cloud recording. And the way it is shared is a streaming link for the students. So they can access to the link as many times as they want, and they can watch it all over like a gazillion times. But the idea is to make it somewhat harder to, like they cannot download the video. And the idea is to prevent that actually the video material that is being shared to decouple it from our institution. Obviously, if you're ill-intended, you always find a way. But per se, the settings are to protect the recordings and our video activities. And with that, we're actually getting to the big part. In Zoom, the Zoom video conferencing tool is configured that all the materials, everything you share, is done through a screen share, right? So I don't know to what extent, have you all been teaching Adobe before? In Zoom, kind of like no materials are uploaded. Everything is shared in real time directly from your device. And there's different ways of sharing, which we'll be looking at right now. And the same as you can share desktop or any application. You can also share a whiteboard, and you can share videos in actually a pretty convenient way. You know, it's pretty easy to share videos. You could actually share them directly out of YouTube, and I'll be doing that in a second, just to demonstrate. So when you click on the share, yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, just one question. I mean, but then is, for example, let's suppose we are going to, during this teaching session, we are going to share, you know, two different files, okay? Two PowerPoints, different PowerPoints. So is it good to have the PowerPoints already, you know, open before the class? Because then, you know, my experience is that it's a little bit problematic. I mean, going there and then, correct?
Our recommendation is that before you start the class, you open on the computer all the materials that you know you'll be using, the materials and applications. You know, so if it's two PowerPoint presentation, open those. If it is an Excel, if it is a YouTube video, or if it is a specialized program, open those and shut everything else. Because that helps you, in order to be able to select the application. Look, like here, you have a screen share. When I click on the screen share, this is the next interface I get, the one you're seeing right now. And so basically down here, all this is applications which are open, and I can choose to share. If the application is not open, it doesn't appear here. So I cannot select it to share. Okay.
Thank you.
And again, the recommendation is have everything ready that you'll be using or might be using, and shut off everything else, because then you don't get email notifications popping up during the video conference, you don't get the distractions, and you don't accidentally show something you don't want to show. And on top of that, you're doing a good service to your bandwidth, because your computer is not busy processing other stuff which are not critical to your session. Okay.
Thank you.
So you have the interface. The first option, that's actually sharing your desktop. I try to not do that, because it basically means whenever I move from one application to another, that everybody sees everything I have on my computer, and I prefer not to. And here in the second, like what is the green around is actually the different applications where you can choose to share. So that's my preferred choice. Now I prefer to specifically share applications that I want to use. Important here is at the very bottom you see two tick boxes to share the computer sound and to optimize for video sharing. So those need to be ticked if you want to share a video. to ensure that the sound is actually shared. But if in emergency, if you forgot to kick them, you also have the ability to do that during the sound. Like once you have the video playing, now somebody says, "Oh, I can't hear anything." You can rectify that as well. So sobre la marcha, no? And so once you've selected what you want to share, you click on compartir or share. And when you start sharing, the view, the interface changes. Now I'm totally confused because of this. I have my own menu floating, and then I have the screenshots. So once you share, what you see is actually like the main thing you see is the materials you're sharing, and the menu actually becomes floating, which is basically in Zoom, like the different elements you can work with are, you can configure them as at your liking. Like for example, if you were teaching in Adobe before, Adobe is static and the participant always sees what you're seeing. In Zoom, that is not the case. People can choose to make the chat bigger or smaller and take away some stuff and pull up others. And so the moment you start screen sharing, actually the menu is no longer at the bottom, but it automatically flips up, and then you can drag and drop it somewhere where it doesn't bother you. But so now this is an example of the menu at the top. You can see here an indication, a warning, or an indication that you're sharing your screen. Right next to it, you have the option to stop the screen share. And here at top, actually, now it doesn't call, like the button changed its name. Now it's not screen sharing anymore, but it is actually called a new share. I think in English it's a new share. And that allows you to click on, basically what that does, it avoids that you have to close the PowerPoint to open the next PowerPoint and take the participants through that process with you. But you can actually get directly to the new material, and only once you share the new material are the participants taken away from the first one. I'm not sure if that is clear. Does that make sense? Yeah, excellent. So it is actually pretty convenient because you don't have to take people through the painful process of closing and fiddling around and reopening and everybody witnessing the whole process. But like on the back of the materials they're seeing, you can actually do that pretty comfortably. Then you have the functionality of annotation. If you click on that, an additional menu pops up where you can actually choose the typeface, or kind of choose what you want to do. You have, you should also be able to see an annotation button at in your menu, because the annotation function really is a collaborative function, and unless you specifically disable that for the participants, which you can do here, participants can annotate as well. They could annotate on top of the PowerPoint, or could annotate on the whiteboard, for example. You can do collaborative work on the whiteboard with people through Zoom. So that's the annotation button. And the three dots, basically what happens if you, when you open functionalities, when you start working in Zoom, Zoom is trying to optimize what you see on your screen. And so eventually, some of the functionalities where you before had an icon in the menu get collapsed because there's not enough space to display everything, and they get collapsed into the three dots. So for example, before that, I don't know if you remember, but we had an icon for the chat. And now the icon on the menu actually disappeared, and it got collapsed into the additional functionalities you have. So when you click on the three dots, you'll see the chat and you'll see the breakout rooms. So the grupos is the breakout rooms, which before were displayed as an icon in the menu, and now got collapsed into that view. it's a question of getting used to it. I think in the beginning, at times, it caused some history because suddenly a professor wanted to deploy the work room, the breakout rooms, and didn't see the button anymore. So I'm like, well, I lost them. And in reality, they just got displayed in a different way. So I'm just for you to be aware of it. And the same kind of like, for example, now that the chat, like if it's not open and I don't have the icon anymore, so basically if I get a new chat message, this thing turns orange and puts a number in there. So I'm actually, it's a visual way to make me aware that something's going on there. Is it possible for the student to record the session? No. No, a student cannot record a session. The session, I think, can only be recorded once. And they cannot record it. It's on the screen. It's on the screenshot here, but the screenshot is also taken from a post view. You know, so this students don't have the ability to record the session. And here, what you have is the functionalities of actually prevent annotation, or to actually show the name of the people who are annotating. You know, so particularly if you're doing a collaborative piece of work, you might actually want to see those people, or I don't know, maybe in general you want to have it enabled so that you don't have somebody being funny and scribbling all over your PowerPoint without being able to do this. Okay. So this is the student view. This is the view that you guys actually should have right now. So the same kind of like at the top, you see what you'll be seeing right now is kind of like, okay, you're seeing Ulrike's screen, and right next to it, you have a little menu, you know, like you have the little arrow button. If you click on it, you have some functionalities again. And so actually the first one is to solicit a remote control of the materials. I think this is important for people who are co-teaching. You know, kind of like if you have multiple faculty, or if you actually want somebody else to take the lead on the materials you're sharing there, you can ask them to do so, and then you get like a pop-up that somebody is asking to remote control of your presentation. So as a host, you can give permission to somebody else to actually advance in PowerPoint deck or whatever it is. And if you click on the annotation, you can actually, you'll see the annotation menu. And you can scribble on my presentation. You could. And maybe here, the next option down here, this is not highlighted, but it's actually pretty convenient. This is to configure your view. So if you want to try it, this is actually a way for you to see the materials that are being shared, or the speaker view, and you can adjust and kind of make it bigger or smaller and see more or less video feeds on the right. And you can drag that. And as a participant, I think it's comfortable because it allows you to have more or less of your co-participants displayed and to understand a little bit about what's going on. Or it's a quick way to check in faces if people are following, or make the presentation materials bigger. So I think it's quite comfortable for students. I think it might be a comfortable way. And this is just a view. If you want, I can actually briefly share a video, or we can leave it for the end to make sure I know. I don't know if you're curious to see it. I'm happy to share a video. Yes, no? No? So I'm doing exactly that. I'll go to new share, but you're still seeing my, you're still seeing the presentation while I'm already manipulating and choosing the next material I want to share. And I'm actually going to take you to my, to the YouTube. And I'm actually going to take you exactly to that video. Can you hear?
Yes.
So I'll go back to the presentation. You guys? Alvaro, you've got a question?
Yes. So you were in the PowerPoint, you move into show as a video, and then when you are coming back to the PowerPoint, you need to scroll down to the slide.
I think I chose the power. To be honest, now I think I chose the different application. It should
Okay.
actually stay on the same. It should stay on the same. But
Okay.
because PowerPoint, when you put into the presentation mode, it actually opens like a second application window. So from the PowerPoint, if you go from the editing mode to the presentation mode, it's not the same application, but it actually takes you to a new application. And I
Okay.
think that's what happened. So I went back to the presentation I prepared before. And that's why I had to re-scroll, but it shouldn't be that way. Okay.
Okay. So it's something to consider, no, when choosing the way we share.
Yes. I think in the beginning, particularly in actually, like I'm still every now and then because because the boxes are floating. Okay, like I have the chat floating, I have the list of participants floating, I have the video feed floating. So yes, it's different pieces to be looking at, and you have to get used to it. Here the next screen, which is it's just an example of a shared Excel. But at the end of the day, the good thing is that you can share every program which runs on the class computer or every program which runs on your computer, because everything is in share, and so you can pull out everything you want really. So Navigator is. Oops, I'm sorry. So Navigator, I think it is very comfortable. And similar as we've seen before, when you select the material you want to show, you can select the whiteboard. And so for the whiteboard, you can scribble on it. You can managing the whiteboard with the mouse is not the most comfortable thing. And so if you have the possibility, you can use any additional devices. Now, I mean, I think some people get the drawing pads. Some people actually choose to connect from a second device. So if you have a Surface computer or if you have a tablet, you could simply connect to the same video conference from a second device, and then use that device for the drawings, for example. I think it depends a little bit on your class dynamic, like how you use the whiteboard, how intensively, and to figure out what's the most comfortable solution for your dynamics. No? But we assume you can log in from multiple devices to the same session, and so that it will not change on. And in the whiteboard, you have the same now. The functionality actually isn't called annotation anymore, but it's called whiteboard. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. Like kind of click on it, and you get the option to select different colors and formats. And I think the two most important buttons are those, which is basically the delete. When you click on it, you'll get a little menu where you can just delete the last thing that was drawn, or you can delete partially, or you can delete the entire thing. And next to it, you actually have the possibility to download the whiteboard to your device. And so in the Zoom folder, which is installed on your computer, it'll automatically save materials related to a specific date. You know, for every session, if you save any materials, it'll create a new subfolder. And so you can have it as a point of reference later on. You know, in the same way, like once the whiteboard is actually entirely scribbled, here you don't really see the icon, but there's at the top, at the bottom right, you'll see a little icon which allows you to open a new sheet, so to speak, and you can continue whiteboarding. Okay. Now the two big functionalities left to talk about is actually the polling function and the breakout rooms. Now for the polling function, there's two ways you can deploy it. One is to actually leave it prepared on the website, on the web portal. You can include polls, you can create the questions beforehand, and then when you're in session, just simply deploy them. Or secondly, if you have, I don't know, if you're in discussion with a student and you think, well, that might be an interesting point actually to ask. You can create a poll directly during the session, or you can create it live. And I'm just seeing the comment from Anna that you don't see the screen very clear. Is that the case for somebody else as well? Are you all having difficulties, or is it just Anna?
I think it was in the previous, no, in the when you share the Excel, because I think it was a short screen.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, it was a screenshot. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If there's any problems, just let me know, because I'm obviously seeing the materials from my computer directly, and so it looks perfect. So for you to create a poll beforehand, what you would need to do is actually get to the web portal, which is iduniversity.zoom.us, log on to your account, select the meeting where you actually want to click on meetings, which gives you to a list of meetings which are scheduled. So basically what you should see here is a recurring meeting, which then has the name of the class. Maybe it's IMBA, January 2020, section 5, I don't know. So you have the class link, and so you need to select the meeting where you want to make the modifications. And once you click on that, this is the interface you have, so you can actually get the entire meeting information. And at the very bottom, you see the polls and the possibility to actually add. And so from the little green, from the little red square, if you blow it up, you can see it a little better. Yeah. But basically, here you have the opportunity to add poll questions. And you can also go back to that later at any time and kind of add new questions, or even you can see here right now there's poll 1, new question, and you still have the possibility to go back and add it. If you want to rework part of the preparation, you can always do that. And when you click on add poll, this is basically the interface that will pop up. And so obviously you have to choose a title for the poll. You can select whether it's anonymous or not.
Ulrike, sorry, I'm sorry, but you know I can hear you. I mean it's I mean if you can try to bring the microphone closer to your.
Yes, I will. Is that any better?
Thank you. Thank you.
So when you create the poll, I just jumped. You would select the title, you can select whether the poll is anonymous or whether you actually want to be able to track who said what. And then you start simply typing in the question, single choice, multiple choice, answer options. And then you can or add more questions or just simply save. No? And so if you add multiple questions, this is the second view. You know? So basically the first question was about your favorite color, second question is about your favorite food, and you can keep adding questions. So if you want to create different polls for specific topics, but you can include multiple questions in each one. Important, very important at the end, always save. And this is a screenshot now from what it looks like in the meeting. So let's assume that you have prepared some questions on the web portal and now you're in session and you want to deploy those questions, right? And so at the menu bottom, at the menu at the bottom, you click on the votaciones or polls, and this is the pop-up which you'll see. Okay, like so you'll have the poll 1, the title you put. At the right, if you click on the little arrow, you can actually see in this case there's 2 polls created for this meeting. And so here you can choose to deploy the first or the second. You could switch between them. And once you have selected the poll you want to use, you simply click on Iniciar votación or Open Poll, and the participants actually get a notification. So if you're curious, I could actually create a question right now. I'll just launch it. Save. So I just created a question. And you'll have to launch the poll. And so basically you will be seeing the question while can you see the question? Yes, okay, I can see you answering. So while you're answering, I can see how it is being filled in, whereas you can only see your own choice, right? And so once I think this is it, I just finalize, and then I can choose whether to share the results with the students or not. So that is my my option actually. And then I can choose to kind of go back, and this is it. So it is actually pretty easy to create polls in session if the question is not too complex. And you've seen the effect on the receiving end. Okay, like you've seen how the students actually get displayed the questions. And here on this slide, we actually have a couple of screenshots which you can see how I'm seeing the poll and I'm deploying. So this is the open poll. You can see how people fill it in. You click on finalize the voting. This is the results I see as a host. I can see that 2 out of 2 and 100% of students chose green as their favorite color. And at the bottom, I have the option to choose between whether I actually share the results or not. And I also have the option to reopen the poll and let people vote all over again. And the next one is what you just saw right now, which is basically the host is sharing the poll results with you. And you can see the an important it is important to bear in mind that like once you open the poll, you deploy it, you close it, the results get cleared. right? So you can, within the poll functionalities, you cannot go back to the results which were given out maybe 10 minutes ago. However, on the web portal, it does record the voting from the current session that is actually still active. If that makes sense. You also can, like, if you have multiple questions, obviously you open the polls, you launch them, you click them away because you want to get back to your materials, and then at a later stage, you might open a different question. And if maybe at the end of the session you want to go back to some of those answers, you have that available, but you would need to look it up on your on the web portal. No, on the same, and it's actually, you can see.
Sorry, Ulrike. Where on the web portal would be the results available?
It's yes, it's at the bottom. So if I go back here, no, you have what we just did to create the polls on the web portal. The meetings, at the bottom of the meetings, you see the poll questions. If the meeting is running, this is where you see the results. Now, just below, if you're just below poll 1, in your question, you would actually see the results displayed. Now, so this one is a zoom in. No, it's a bigger screenshot of the bottom of the page, which we just saw. And no, does that make sense? I recommend, if you have an opportunity, if you're planning to use the feature, to try it out. We're going to set up some mock polls, and play with it, so that you actually get have an opportunity to scroll through things and actually see where it is. It's literally on the web portal at the bottom of your page in the active meeting. What you don't see at this stage, and this particularly for users who have been doing the video conferencing with Adobe before, what you don't see in the results displayed at this stage is who voted what. You see the absolute number and you see the percentages of how people voted. But you cannot see if David voted A and Susie voted B. You can run a report after the session is concluded on the web portal, and you can download that information, and there you can see that detail. Now, for example, if you're using polls as part of the class participation, for example, and if you want to be able to see who gave what answer, if it is correct answers and that kind of stuff, you can pull that level of detail, but only once the session is actually concluded. Any questions?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
And so this is actually the interface. It's a screenshot of the interface when you create a polling right during the session. So it's, you click on the polling function at the bottom in the menu. It invites you to add a question, and then the interfaces you get are the same. You know, so basically it's the same pop-up, so to speak, independently whether you do it from the website or from within the application. I think this is a screenshot. This is basically an explanation on how you can pull the reports after the meeting concluded. But I would recommend the exactly same screenshots are actually on the website as well, on the support site. There's a lot of more detailed explanation about how to deploy the polling tool and how you can get to the reports. And so if you're curious, if you need to figure that out, I'd invite you to actually consult the website, and you can do that step by step in parallel on your own web portal and pull the report. And this is the last big topic, which is the breakouts. And so for the breakout rooms, similarly, you have the opportunity to create breakout groups in real time during the session, which you could do at random or assign manually, which might be a viable option for smaller groups. or you can actually organize pre-assigned breakout groups. And similar to what we just saw with the polling function, the pre-assignment of breakout groups would be done through the web portal. I think first I'll be sharing how you could generate in real time. And also, if I click at here at the bottom in the menu, breakouts icon. The next thing I see is actually this pop-up, which invites me to assign. Here, it was just a trial that I did by myself, so it was just one participant connected to the video conference. We have 20 students, assign 20 participants into how many rooms, which is how you would determine the size of the group. And then you can choose whether automatically or manually. And automatically obviously is the easiest way because it assigns people at random and just can split, I don't know, 20 participants between 4 groups.
Sorry, Ulrike, just one question. I mean, let's suppose, I mean, we are 3 participants today, in addition to yourself as a host. Let's suppose that you say that you want to create 2 rooms. Okay, so one room is going to have 2 participants and the other one is going to have 1, right?
Exactly.
So, and they do that.
Yes.
This is being done by Zoom. So Zoom understands that you know that one room is going to be larger than the other one, right?
Yes. If the number is uneven and it doesn't fit, yes, there might be a variation having 2 and 1 or whatever, 5 and 6.
Okay. Thank you.
People per group. And so once you
and then, you know, the other question that I have, let's suppose that I have 20 students in class. Okay, I have 20 students, but that day, okay, considering those who are face-to-face plus those who are in remote are 16. Okay, if I ask to break out the rooms, okay, say in 4 rooms, are they going to, is Zoom going to do groups of 5 or groups of 4?
If you have 16 people connected to the conference?
Yes, but I have 20 students, you know, that could be, at that point in time, could be connected.
And Zoom here, like when it pulls here, when it says assign, this is going to be the number of participants connected to the video conference.
At that time.
Right. At that time.
At that time. So if somebody if somebody was connected and then disconnected, that person is not going to count, right?
Yes. If somebody kind of like left the session half an hour early and is missing
but you know, but that person was connected. Okay, so that means that if you are not connected at that particular point in time, okay, Zoom does not consider yourself.
No.
Correct?
Yes, it does not consider, to create the breakout, it only considers people who are connected to the session at that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
If somebody's been connected, their connection was interrupted and they'll join you 2 minutes after you actually created the breakout, they would join back into the main room, and you always have the opportunity to assign them manually. Now, so if we're talking about, let's say, an internet connection problem or my computer crashed,
okay,
and I'm just in those 2 minutes where you're creating the breakouts, I'm unfortunately disconnected, but I come back whatever, like a minute later. You always can make that assignment manually.
Okay. Thank you.
For the hybrid classroom, breakouts are a bit of a challenge in terms of sound, you know, getting good sound quality. There's obviously different ways you can group people, but assuming that there's a grouping between people who are face-to-face and people who are connected remotely, we've done several tests, and the sound is of different quality, you know, because like within the classroom, people have social distancing rules, so you can't really pull people closely together. So they have to speak up louder when they're talking to each other. And if you connect everybody through Zoom, obviously the participants in the classroom need to be connected with a headset and speak through Zoom with a classmate, which might be in the classroom or remotely. And depending on the split, the quality of sound and thereby the quality of the conversations is uneven, to say the least. So it's not. If that is something you're considering, you might want to try that beforehand. Or I don't know if you have the confirmation already from program management what the split is between the people in the classroom and the people remote. That's helpful as well. Okay.
Rehearsals of sessions. And the problem was uneven. I mean, that was uneven.
Yeah.
But, but my question is, I mean, is uneven right now, because I understand that, some progress has been made. Is uneven just for breakouts, or is uneven anyway?
It's the breakouts.
Only for breakouts. So if the situation is that that I have not done any kind of breakout, but I am, in remote, okay, from home, okay, and I want to participate in class, asking a question, participating in a whatever, okay. In that case, there is no problem with the sound.
I've always been connected to one of our sessions remotely recently, so maybe you want to show your impression.
Now, my impression was, but I attended this session, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks ago, and at that time it was a little bit, noisy, so to speak, and not with breakouts. It was just a matter of that it was difficult to participate. Okay.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you.
But Alvaro, are you still there?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Because you connected to the session last Friday as a remote student, and we actually tried the breakouts, no?
Yes, and it was working.
Okay. So in general, in Salvador, you know that they've been working on the installations on the microphones for the classrooms.
Yes.
And so I think they're working as diligently and as quickly as they can to make sure that everything is that the installations are what they need to be as soon as the classes come back on campus.
Okay.
And so that's the only thing I can say, because it's I know they're working towards it, and so I understand that the planning is also taking that into consideration, to make sure that the sessions actually get scheduled, like the first sessions get scheduled in the rooms we have already fully equipped.
Thank you, Ulrike. Thank you.
So assuming we have decided how many rooms we will, and then I just click on the create rooms button, and that's the next view I get. Now, so again, right now for the screenshots, there was nobody else in the sessions, but basically you get breakout room 1, you get the names, which are of the participants which are assigned. And in this pop-up, here at the bottom left, you have an icon options, where you can actually make some configurations, not kind of like for example, the first option is to move all participants into the breakouts automatically once you start them, which I think is convenient, because this way there's no additional delay. And then you can actually choose to maybe pre-configure the duration of the breakout rooms. You can configure a notification for yourself. And then there's a timer, basically a countdown, or like once the time dedicated to the breakout is up, the students get a notification, and then there's a countdown until they actually get automatically transferred back into the main meeting session. You yourself can join the different breakout conversations. And also, for example, like once you have participants assigned to the groups, this is not called assign anymore. The name changes into join. And so you can simply click on the join button next to the breakout room member. And you can join each of the group conversations. Now you can actually step in and ask if, I don't know if there's any, the same as you would do in a physical environment where you would probably check in with the group to see if there's any clarification needed or just to make the rounds. And in a similar way, the students actually have a button which is a help button, which sends you a notification that Team D has a question. So you can actually also respond to that. And you can make this, I'll go and join them in the conversation to see what's up. And with that, I think we're pretty much at the end of the presentation. You have, check. Oh, no, and this is a couple of screenshots where you can actually do the pre-assigned work groups. You know, on the same kind of, it always gets us back to the web portal. You select the meeting where you want to make the changes. At the bottom, you have to choose to edit the meeting. And then in the meeting options, you need to tick the breakout room pre-assign. And then you have two ways to actually do that. You can either create rooms and then you have a drop-down menu where you put like the student name and it automatically pulls from the active IE users, and like it makes suggestions. So if I put in, it pulls the names and you can just like choose participants. Which I think is a good way to manage smaller groups. And if you have bigger groups, you can actually choose to import a CSV file and pre-assign the groups. There's a lot of details here, but I actually don't want to go through all this detail at this moment in time. You find detailed instructions on the website. If this is something you want to look into, and if you need any support in setting up pre-assigned breakout rooms, you can always drop by because I think it's a little. Zoom is very rich in the ability to actually configure, make configuration, make adjustments. But in the beginning, I think it might be really overwhelming about all the stuff you can do. And so I don't want to spend much more time on this. If that's okay with you. All right. And so,
Ricky.
yes.
So I have a question regarding breakout rooms. Just imagine for a second that I'm doing it in real time, and I want like these students to be in the same room, like, I don't know, Henry and Jessica and Bruno.
Yes.
And another group, 4 or 3 or 2, or maybe one with me. How do I do that so that I don't waste time, you know, just organizing the whole thing? Because I'm not, you know, I didn't do it. In this case, imagine I didn't do it pre-assigned because I didn't know, you know, what students were going to be in the class. So I'm doing it like in real time. How do I do that?
Do that without losing any time is going to be hard. No,
It's going to be what?
You can assign them manually. You know, you get onto the breakout icon. And
but it's going to take time. Yeah.
But depending how many students you have, no, I think assigning people, if it's up to a group of, I don't know, maybe 20, I think it's manageable. Everything beyond,
yeah,
it
takes too much time.
It's getting very fiddly.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have. I don't know if that is something you're planning to do in a lot of sessions, or if it is an exception. I don't know if you have the luxury of having somebody supporting you during your session.
Yeah. Well, it could be an exception, and I'll just try to do it like pre-assigned, so I don't waste time. And if a student is not in class, then I can rearrange. That's easier. I can rearrange the whole thing, and that's easier than just do it manually in the moment.
Have a look at the website. Now, if you pre-assign the breakouts, obviously you can like you feed the student emails into the system and say those are the people who should be in the session and this is how they should be grouped. But obviously the moment you deploy the pre-assigned workgroups, the system contrasts the information you have pre-assigned with the actual participants connected. No? And so if somebody's not connected, they don't get assigned. And if somebody is not connected with their, for example, is not connected with their email, which is student.edu, but is connected maybe through their Google, which is also through their email, but not in, they might not get assigned correctly, no? But again, if you are talking about larger groups, it's much easier to assign 1 or 2 or 3 people manually than doing the whole thing from scratch.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No questions. Thank you. Thank you, Ulrike. Thank you.
Yeah. I think, again, this session is designed to be a basic introduction, and obviously I would encourage you to log on to the tool and actually start playing around with it a little bit. I think once you're getting familiar with the basic functionalities, I think it is actually pretty comfortable to use. And also it offers the opportunity to connect with your students beyond the actual class, for office hours or for other conversations. And so I think that's very, very convenient. I encourage you to explore. And if you have any specific questions that you want to prepare for, or that you're trying to figure out a specific dynamic, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. Or again, you can drop by to any of our office hours, which are every day at 10 a.m. and 4 p.m.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ulrike.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.